Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gerardo Poli.
And this, oh, sorry. Okay.
One of the best bits of advice I've ever received was to find good mentors and to learn from them. Trusted people who have already done what you're trying to do now. I've been fortunate throughout my career to have some fantastic mentors to help guide me, but I realized that they'd be hard to find and also hard to commit the time to one. This is why we've gathered some of the best minds from the veterinary world and squeezed them for their wisdom so that you don't have to learn the hard way.
With the help of our guests, we flip the veterinary profession on its back and explore its soft underbelly to find the tips, tools, and inspiration that you'll need to build the career that you've always wanted.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Vet Vault podcast. Today, we are taking a bit of a detour out of clinical practice. We've always known that as part of our guest list that we wanted to speak to vets from outside of clinical practice to provide us with some insights about part of the profession that neither of us knew anything about. When it came to choosing who we should interview from the world of industry, today's guest was at the top of both of our lists. Dr. Mina Hamilton is a smiling bundle of energy and enthusiasm who took her talents out of clinical practice and into life as an industry vet a few years ago, when she decided to work for one of the leading pet food companies. When you watch Dr. Mina doing her thing at work, you're immediately struck by how much she makes it look like a hell of a lot of fun, which is exactly why we wanted to talk to her. We wanted to find out if it really is fun and dig a bit into the whys, the hows, the pros and the cons.
Our conversation with Mina covers a wide range of topics. We talk about how to know whether or not your job is right for you or not, about making a decision whether or not to stay or go, and how to approach leaving when it's time for you to move on. Mina tells us what she loves about being a technical veterinarian and the skills that she's learned and how to break bad habits, and also why holidays are so important and much, much more. Please plug in, sit back, and lend your ears to Dr. Mina Hamilton. Mina, thanks for jumping on the podcast. There was something that you wrote in your bio, and it was something around being called the turtle lady, or being known as the turtle lady. Hubert thinks that you don't look anything like a turtle, and I haven't decided yet, but can you kind of explain what the turtle lady is?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll take it as a compliment that you think that I don't look like a turtle, which is great. But yeah, so being the crazy turtle lady was definitely a nickname that was given to me in vet school and carried through to professional life. And the way it sort of happened, yeah, I know it's probably not quite as interesting a story as you think it might be, but essentially what had happened was I used to work in an animal shelter. And we used to get a lot of animals being surrendered. And one of the more common things that we used to get through were reptiles, in particular turtles. And one day I was working in the wildlife area, and we had a couple of pet turtles brought into the shelter, and I offered to take them home because I thought that I could potentially give them a better space in my bathroom where they could recuperate and recover from their medical conditions. And so I took 3 turtles home with me. And 3 turtles turned into 13 turtles over a period of
in your bathroom.
Yes. So it wasn't because they bred or anything crazy like that.
Oh, okay. Just like you have them for so long that they nested in your bathroom. That's a really kind of creepy.
I think turtle breeding's meant to be a bit more challenging than that. But
And have you ever seen a turtle mate? That's not something you want to see while you're having a bath.
Okay, yeah, no.
Yes, but no. Essentially, what had happened was I had gotten a bit of a reputation that I would take turtles on, and apparently I was somewhat of a turtle expert. And so the turtles started rolling in, and I took them on. And before I knew it, I was a vet student taking out a loan to set up my home as a turtle sanctuary. So I had 3 large tanks, a terrarium where I could dry dock the ill turtles.
That's your turtles trying to escape now.
Yeah. dogs causing havoc in the background. But then we also had a swimming pool in the backyard for the turtles, for the larger turtles. So not for us, but for the turtles. And I actually got pretty heavily involved in breeding insects because they used to eat so much food. Feeding 13 mouths was quite a chore. So so my place was quite interesting for a while there. So I did turtle foster caring for about 3 to 4 years. And and had quite a number of turtles come through my place. But at any one time, I would have between sort of 13 to 15 turtles at once.
So are we talking the wild? We're talking wildlife or pet turtles?
It was actually a combination of both. So it was injured wildlife. So if they had shell fractures or abscesses, but then also a lot of pet turtles that perhaps weren't looked after to the best of the owner's abilities. And so they'd come in with all sorts of skin infections and shell issues and metabolic bone disease. And so I got pretty well versed on turtle medicine. I did a lot of turtle surgery and anaesthetic once I actually graduated. But when I was in vet school, I spent all my pennies on actually recovering these turtles, and it became a bit of a hobby for me. But yeah, very rewarding experience.
The skills you would have picked up in turtles would have put you ahead of pretty much every other vet in the world as a new grad. There's not a hell of a lot of people that know much about them. That's amazing.
Turtle Lady, I can see now how that's relevant. You know, Hubert has a nickname that he doesn't like anyone to know, and that's because it sounds a bit like.
Thanks, Sharon. You remember, I can edit anything you say.
And I have a nickname that in vet school that I absolutely hate that no one knows, and sometimes they call me it, and I'm so used to just like letting it slide, like, oh yeah, so I'll respond to it, so I don't let anything happen, so because they will catch on. They'll be like, if I let loose that this particular name is what I don't like the most out of anything, I'm fairly certain everyone will start calling me it, especially at work. That's how.
Are you going to tell us?
No.
That's clearly no. But thank you.
That's just a massive tease. Yeah.
You've now given me a new life goal. Is to get Gerardo drunk and get his nickname out of it. Oh, I can just phone Alex and see if
she doesn't know. So this is every year we have this at our annual meetings. We have this tell one thing that our closest business partners and managers and stuff don't know about you, and it's like I struggle. And this one comes up frequently. I'm like, no, don't say this. I don't trust anyone.
I'm sensing some trust issues there.
A little bit around this name.
Yeah.
Did you think about I don't know, transition into reptile medicine or something, or was it just a thing you did on the side, but small animal practice was something where you wanted to head into, or what was your did it actually result in anything, I suppose?
I absolutely thought that I was going to end up being some sort of reptile vet. I got so into it at one point. But I think when I graduated, the world of veterinary medicine kind of opened up before me, and there were so many other things to learn and so many other things to sort of get good at and build skills in, that even though I kept doing all the turtle medicine stuff on the side, I developed interest in other things. So if you actually Googled, because I was working in Melbourne in a practice in northeastern suburbs, and if you actually Googled turtle vet, my name would pop up as a supposed turtle expert, which terrified me when I found out, because I thought all these people are going to start bringing their turtles to me and expect that I can do a good job of this. So there was immense pressure to get even better at it when I graduated. So, but so very cool. Turtles are pretty amazing creatures.
I love turtles. I used to have huge numbers of fish, and I prided on the fact that I had a big tank which had different continent fish from different continent in the one tank, which apparently you should never do and never had. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And then like not hundreds, about 40 fish in this big tank. So I got really good. And then I let loose a little bit that I was kind of pretty okay with fish medicine stuff. And now there is a push to try to get me on Facebook or put me on the website as kind of like the fish doctor. I'm like, no.
That's the risk. Got to be careful what you say you like.
Especially with the fields that that there's really almost nobody who does it. All you need to have is an inkling of an interest and a little bit of more skills than everybody else. And suddenly you're the specialist and you go, no, I still know almost nothing. I just know a little bit more than the rest of you who don't want to do it.
That's exactly right.
So, Mina, you're 4 years into practice. You're becoming skilled at general practice. You're good at turtle medicine. Then you do your master's in small animal studies. And then suddenly you're working as an industry vet for Royal Canin. What prompted that shift?
Yeah, it's I think it surprised a few people in my life when I finished my master's and was sort of on a path to, I wanted to specialize. I really wanted to further my skills in medicine. And then all of a sudden I was actually on holidays. I was in Thailand and I was sitting on a beach and I was just thinking about life. I'd actually just finished reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was sitting on the beach. It's a great book. And I was really just reflecting on where I was at in my life. And I'd realized that I think I developed what a lot of vets call in our profession the 3-year itch. You get to about 3 years out and you start to feel like you need more. And even though practice had a lot of challenges daily, I was really looking for that next big challenge. I was looking for a steep learning curve and I wasn't quite getting it in what I was doing in practice. So I actually really enjoyed where I worked. I had great mentors. I worked in a practice that had great standard of medicine, standard of care. And I just got to the point where I thought, I actually don't think that I could get much better than this from a clinical practice experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do something totally different, but still use my vet degree. So sitting on the beach there in Thailand, I actually sent our Royal Canin sales rep a message and said, you seem happy in your job. What's Royal Canin like to work for? And got back a response from her. And next thing I know, I found out that they were actually looking for a technical veterinarian and I applied. So I sort of just fell into it, having this moment of self-reflection on the beach on holidays, realizing that I really didn't want to go back to work. There's not wanting to go back because you want to stay on holidays. And then there's just not wanting to go back. And that was where I'd gotten to. So I just decided to change course and do something totally different, thinking I would take 12 months off, gain a little bit of that challenge that I was looking for, but get a little bit of a break mentally and emotionally from practice. But 4 years on, I'm still working as a technical vet. It's been extremely rewarding and something that I've unexpectedly become really passionate about.
Wow, that's cool. I like the whole thing, which is you're feeling something, right, and then you took action on it. Not necessarily saying that everyone who feels like they have a 3-year itch should change career and jumps, from clinical practice to industry. But, like what I admire about the fact is that actually you took action on something and, asked that question. Imagine if you didn't and you sat there ruminating over it and you never asked that rep, what was it like,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of this whole concept of like trusting your journey. I think that when you work really hard towards something like a veterinary degree, it's always with you. You never lose it, regardless of whether you step off the veterinary career track to do something else. You'll always remain a vet. So in my mind, it wasn't a risk, and it wasn't major to me, because I think when you step off your career path, that's where you learn the most. And so I was just looking for what other skills can I learn that will actually help me be a better veterinarian in the long term. I just haven't come back to being a better veterinarian yet. That's all.
So what have you learned about yourself as working in this position that surprised you?
I've learned a lot of new skills. I think one of the things that took me by surprise, and I was possibly a bit naive about, to be honest, taking on the role, was that this type of role requires a lot of public speaking. And prior to stepping into this role, I wouldn't say that I was nervous. I was definitely nervous about public speaking. I think I've always been good at talking, but I'm not sure that I've been good at public speaking. And so taking on the role, I remember in the interview, they said, there could be a little bit of public speaking. Are you okay with that? And I thought, yeah, I think I'm okay with that. And 7 days into my role, yeah, sorry, Gerardo.
I was going to say, like when you go to a practice and there's 2 vets and 4 nurses, it's public speaking, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You do a client night and 10 people show up and you tell them about puppy nutrition or something random. And you think, yeah, that's public speaking. And then within a week of me being at Royal Canin, an opportunity popped up for a vet from the business to present at one of the big veterinary conferences. It's 120 vets. It's a breakfast session.
Oh, wow.
And hey, we want you to present on renal disease and how nutrition can help. And yeah, if I hadn't have been so new to the office, I think I would have thrown up right then and there when they asked me. I was genuinely just crapping myself over this. And yeah, I spent so many sleepless nights in the lead up to it. And the night before, I barely slept a wink. But after ticking it off and getting up there and presenting, that's pretty much the beginning of what has since been a lot of public speaking. And now I feel so confident in just getting up in front of a room full of people and talking about anything. And it doesn't matter how many people in the room, and it doesn't matter who they are. There's just that confidence now that you're not going to die and everything's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah. Well,
So it's just like that massive kind of push the boundaries where like it's something where I suppose you didn't really, maybe you did have the option to say no, but you were kind of stuck with the option, and you kind of, you know, being new to the company, you're like, okay, I should do this. This is my chance, right? But and really, again, you know, doing what you could and taking action, and then the outcome was that you pushed such a big boundary that it was, you know, stuff is so much easier now because you've done that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a huge part of my role now. So internally, we do a lot of public speaking to do training. So we teach our internal associates about nutrition, but externally, there's a lot of public speaking. And so it's one of those skills that you can't really work on in clinical practice. You do publicly speak to a degree, but to do it in front of large audiences and to put together presentations that are engaging and leave impact, I think is a totally different skill set that I don't think I would have otherwise had the opportunity to develop.
Well, the first time I met you, Mina, was that you did a little talk, a little presentation, and that pretty much resulted partially in you being here, because me and Gerardo were discussing that we wanted to talk to an industry vet on the podcast, and he said, yeah, I know this one vet, and I went, no, I've got the perfect vet. I saw her at a talk, and she's so well spoken and enthusiastic and bubbly, and it was you. So there we go. You've obviously
thank you.
Either you have a natural talent or you've learned how to do it beautifully.
Yeah, I think it comes with time. Definitely a lot of practice. I feel a bit sorry for the audiences I first spoke to, maybe in the first 6 months of my role. But yeah, no, thank you. It's nice to know that you leave an impact when you do get up there and you present. So that's great.
Where did you learn? Did you have a specific, did you do specific training courses or just learn on the job? How do you improve that skill, or what was your path to improving on it?
So I think definitely learning on the job is the biggest way that I've learned how to publicly speak. But I actually did do a formal public speaking course, and it was you attended for a full day, and it was a real immersion in public speaking. You know, you show up, you're in the room with, 10 people that you've never met before, and in the first half an hour you're asked to do a presentation on a hobby that you enjoy. So it doesn't really matter what the topic is, but you had to get up and present. So and you presented multiple times over the course of the day, and they video you, which is terrifying, might I add. And then everybody watches the video back with you and gives you and critiques your public speaking and what you could do to have more impact and have more presence. So that was a really interesting experience. But I've also done a fair bit of media training with Royal Canin as well. I think that's another thing another skill set that you just don't get the chance to develop as a clinical practice vet, is the ability to get up in front of media and do radio interviews and speak to journalists and get your key messages across.
What was the name of the course that you did?
It's called Present Inspire.
Present Inspire. Okay, I'll put that in the show notes in case anybody's ever interested. Inspire. Cool.
It is a major barrier, and I totally think that some people may have looked at the job description and freaked out a bit about the whole public speaking thing, and I would, like, from personal experience as well, I do a lot of continuing professional development seminars and talks in front of students and things where there could be a couple hundred. But it was a progression. It's not like as if we got to the point where we are now, where we feel comfortable without, months and years of fumbling and then asking for advice. And Alex and I, every time we speak, we always, including Rob, three of us, if we're speaking somewhere and the other people listening, we always ask for feedback, like what can we do better? What do we do well? What could we do better? And it's kind of just one thing. Sometimes it's like, I used to say a lot. So now I'm very conscious about that. The other thing would be, I used to put my hands in my pockets. So then I'm conscious about that. So, and forever kind of improving. And it's good to have safe people who you trust and you value their advice. But it's not like as if anyone stepped into their particular field or stepped into their profession knowing everything. It took you time to learn how to take care of turtles. It took you like time how to be comfortable with general practice. You did continuing professional development to get better at general practice, right? And then you did further training in media and also public speaking, so it's a culmination of everything where you are. Some people don't see that's years and practice and stress as well. Like your journey, as you said before, trust in your journey, which is awesome, got you to where you are now. So it's not like as if this landed in your lap, was it?
No, definitely not. I think you're right. It does take a lot of work, and getting out of your comfort zone. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the work is actually taking that step and making that decision to get out of your comfort zone. And like you say, Gerardo, feedback is a gift. It actually really is. Your body deceives you in the worst ways when you're nervous. The nervous thing that I used to do when I was public speaking was I'd cross my legs. And sometimes I'd sway, so I'd sort of almost look like I was humping air at the front of the room, which is a really socially inappropriate thing to do. And so you need that feedback, because I had no idea I was doing this until somebody said to me, "Hey, you do this really weird thing when you speak, and it's really distracting." And also quite strange, but yeah.
That was like 3 years into your public speaking career, and you're just like, I didn't notice that. I've been humping there for 3
Thanks
years.
everyone for telling me.
That's right. It was only last week, so.
I remembered so much. This Royal Canin rep came out one day and you did this weird humping. I'd love to be awesome. We should do a survey. Here we next time we do a survey. Has anyone had to a presentation by the humping air?
The crazy humping turtle lady.
Yeah. Okay.
We're really building a persona for me, aren't we?
Yeah. We're just bringing it down a few notches, right? So that that's all.
So, nice. Mina, a lot of people, myself included, at some stage, will consider jobs outside of clinical practice, and then specifically in an industry role or a technical veterinarian role. But I think my stumbling block was I didn't really know what it entails. I don't know what you do. I had these visions of, I would be so bored just going from practice to practice trying to sell vaccines. What's the reality? What does a day in the life of Mina look like, if there is such a thing?
I think that's a great question, Hubert, because I actually had no idea when I took the role what I would be doing every single day. And I think a lot of vets don't consider it because they're not aware of what the role actually entails. And to be honest, describing a day for you in the life of Mina is actually quite hard, because every day is so different in this job. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's kept my interest for 4 years, is that it is so different. So in a nutshell, you become a veterinary expert within a corporate business. So you become the go-to person for the marketing team, because they're trying to ensure that what they're communicating is both creative and scientifically accurate. So you get a lot of experience working with marketing, working with sales. You also manage key stakeholder relationships, especially if those stakeholders are veterinarians. You manage those relationships for the business. You become influential in attending industry association meetings and help to lead best practice in that particular field. So that's something that I'm particularly passionate about. You become the expert in nutrition. In my case, it's nutrition, working for Royal Canin, but you become the expert in nutrition to help veterinarians who've got complicated clinical cases. You become an escalation point for pet owners that need more in-depth advice about what to feed, particularly where their animals have medical conditions and are on therapeutic diets. And you become the trainer within the business, both internally and externally. So it's quite a varied role. And every day I'm working on something different. So some days I could be writing scientific content for our blog or reviewing scientific literature. And then on other days, I might be leading projects on veterinary mental health and awareness, which is something Gerardo was involved in, which was the Love Your Pet, Love Your Vet campaign. You get the opportunity to lead these projects that you have a lot of passion for, but are totally unrelated to nutrition.
Okay.
So it's extremely varied, and I think that's why it's actually maintained my interest, because I am the sort of person that likes new challenges all the time. So this type of role will certainly give you that.
Yeah.
Mm.
You mentioned there something actually which like a situation or a scenario where you are stepping onto, or people asking you for advice as an expert in your field, and especially when offering advice on, I suppose, big things which impact the profession as a whole, or with big players, I suppose, or big names in the industry. So, how do you tackle that? How did you tackle Mina coming on board, someone, a person that may never heard before, but then still raising up and talking about what you know?
Yeah. Do you mean as in what? Can you give me an example, Gerardo, of what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say I don't know. I don't exactly know a particular scenario, but I'll give you a scenario, and this maybe you might be able to find one which is applicable. But maybe the AVA or something calls you up, and they're thinking about some kind of legislative change or something, and they want to involve all aspects of the profession and industry. And they go, okay, we need a veterinarian that is knowledgeable on pet food diets or and so forth. Hey, how about was and then Royal Canin sends you along, but in a high stake, big player kind of meeting, how do you kind of hold your own there, or how do you step into those?
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. And yes, those opportunities do come up, and you get the ability to be a veterinary expert, but also an expert in that field that you're in. So in my case, that's nutrition, and I think in those cases, I think you have to know your value. I think that's a really big thing. It can be quite an intimidating situation, and this role does present you with opportunities to be a part of bigger picture projects that, as you say, affect the whole industry and help to lead change. And I think in those situations, the really important thing is to know the value of knowing your value, is to really understand that in that situation, I really do believe that I know a lot about nutrition, and I know a lot about dog and cat health, and enough to be able to advise and provide good advice on what could lead good change, or what could lead best practice in whatever that situation might look like. So I think it's about knowing your value, and those intimidating conversations, yes, they come up in this role because they're sort of big players in an industry, or they're big projects that lead a lot of change. But I think those types of conversations even come up in clinical practice, if I'm not wrong to say that often you do get stuck as a veterinarian, or even as an expert in any field, feeling unworthy, and you do have to remind yourself in those situations that you do have a lot of value, and you do deserve to be there and to have an opinion.
When you're talking about value, a fallback, what would be like the first fallback you fall back on? If you ever feel like, as if you're like, oh, I feel a bit intimidated here, or a bit uncertain about what you can bring to the table. Is there a fallback that you fall back upon, which is that's your first step to realizing and remembering that you bring value to this meeting?
Absolutely. It's kind of like your own personal coaching, right? And for me, it's reminding myself of what I do know, because I think in that headspace, you get so overwhelmed by all the things that you don't know. And you have to remember, you don't need to know everything. You are there for a purpose. So whether you're a clinical practice vet in a consult room with a client that has certain expectations of you, or you're in an industry meeting like something I might attend, at the end of the day, you're there for a purpose. And all you need to be confident about is all the things you do know, and don't worry about all the things you don't know, because that will only cloud your judgment and get you in a terrible headspace.
I think that's really valuable advice, and like I have a very similar thing as well, especially several years back when I stepped into head examiner role at the Australian New Zealand Veterinary College in the chapter of emergency critical care.
That was a big step up for me, and I did that role for a few years in a row. But the first year was quite a lot of battling in my own head. What do I bring to the table when there's people here who are specialists, people here who have years of experience writing exams and running exams for the college. But then I used to always roll back on, I'm here for a reason. They saw something in me, and what do I do? What am I bringing? I'm bringing what I know, and that's what I used to always kind of channel back to, and have at the core, because then that would then, how would you say, impart my belief in myself, and then it would change my mindset and stop the spiral of doubt. So it's interesting to hear, because that's similar things to what I do. So
yeah,
thanks for sharing.
absolutely. That's okay. And I think it reflects in general practice. I mean, clients sometimes ask pretty obscure questions of us. I've certainly been asked about whether I know anything about the medicine of spiders, and and really random things that as a vet you cannot be expected to know. And so I think that, sometimes spiders is probably an extreme example, but sometimes even in a consult room setting for vets, especially as new graduates, you can very quickly spiral and let the things you don't know chip away at your confidence. And so, remind yourself of everything you do know and know your value in that.
That's excellent. I've seen that in a few new grads where they still see themselves as students, and then you have to say to them, no, actually, I could walk out the practice and leave. You don't have to ask my advice. You have permission. You've gone through enough to be able to give a valued opinion. So yeah, just just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Confidence.
Yeah. So it sounds like a fascinating job. Are there downsides? What don't you, at the risk of your employers listening to this and going, well,
what would be the downsides of an industry veterinarian, not necessarily
specifically your jobs? Yeah.
Look, everyone block your ears if you're listening from Royal Canin. No, no, it's not like that at all. I think honestly, you're probably asking the wrong person in that setting, because I actually really do enjoy my job. I think where I think things could turn into negatives is if you're not prepared for some of the very unique sort of challenges of this job. And one of those things is that there's quite a bit of travel. So I personally really enjoy travel. There's domestic travel opportunities, but international travel opportunities, I just grab with both hands. Very excited about those. But I know for some people, they find travel very exhausting. They don't want to be away from home. They like a bit more routine and structure. So I think if you're that type of person, then this type of role would very quickly sort of cause a lot of fatigue. But I personally love that, and I love the travel opportunities. I think the other thing too that probably a lot of technical veterinarians feel is a big con, and it's probably the most obvious one, is that you miss out on clinical practice. You don't get the time to dedicate to being a clinical veterinarian, which is what you studied for all those years. But I think at the same time, if you do have time, whatever time you do have on weekends, if you really are passionate about that, you can devote some of that time to working in practice. And I certainly did that. I locumed as a veterinarian when I first started as a technical vet. I kept a hand in practice, and I know technical vets that continue to do that on a regular basis, but it comes at a cost. I think, you do need to take some time for yourself and rest.
I'd imagine in your position, or anybody's position who in one of the industry roles, that get to see a lot of vet practices and travel internationally to congresses and speak to lots of different people in the industry, you'd have a pretty good, I wouldn't say an outside view, but an overall view of the veterinary profession as a whole. How's it changed in your time at your current job, and where do you see it in 10 years' time?
Yeah, wow, heavy question. So I
Sorry.
think it's actually, no, don't be. I love a good loaded question. No, I think, look, I do actually often describe my role exactly as you've just said, Hubert, as when I was working in practice, it felt very small. You're sort of working away in a practice somewhere, and you're doing your job day in, day out, and you know that you're a part of this bigger industry, but you don't have full exposure to it. And I feel like now networking, feel like I'm on the outside of the industry looking in, and I have noticed a few things. And and I'm very pleased to say that I think the media have picked up on some of this recently, and that's really the stuff around veterinary mental health and being more aware that veterinarians actually do suffer from a lot of mental health issues, and that suicide is something that does strike our profession more than others. And that has become far more apparent to me now that I'm actually moving around between veterinary clinics, speaking to veterinarians from all across the country and even over across New Zealand. It's becoming more and more obvious to me that a lot of veterinarians are struggling, and a lot of veterinarians that have been in practice for perhaps as long as I have, so not new graduates, but not long time veterinarians that have been in the industry for 15 plus years. That's sort of those vets somewhere in the middle. A lot of them are leaving the industry, and I'm certainly feeling that in my own peers, having left and doing various different things, but also owners of veterinary practices commenting to me that they're finding it hard to find experienced vets that have been out sort of 5 to 10 years. So I think that I actually don't know what's going to happen to the industry moving forward, but I expect that there's going to be massive change. And I think that it will be changed for the better. But some of this, we've got to take a really good look at the industry and see what we can do to improve it and improve the working conditions for veterinarians, because it is a really tough job, as you both know, both emotionally and physically. It's very demanding, and people get really worn out. We're all human, and we all get worn out in the same ways.
That's interesting. So do you think it's from when you started watching it, has it changed in this period of time for the worse or for the better? In the let's say almost 5 years that you've been watching.
I think it's probably stayed much the same. To me, I think it's more, for me, it's actually just been more of an awareness piece. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to reflect back in on the industry and take a really good look at how people are sort of coping, how veterinarians are working. And now with my job, I get so much exposure. I get the opportunity to travel around the country and visit so many veterinary practices and work with so many veterinary groups and attend so many veterinary conferences. I feel like I've met thousands of vets and nurses over the last 4 years as a technical veterinarian. And just in my conversations with them, my feeling is that it's a tough industry to work in. A very rewarding one that everyone seems so passionate about, but there's no question that it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at the risk of giving away my advancing age, certainly, just in my time, which is pushing towards 20 years now since studying veterinary science. No, over 20 years if I count my study years. There have been changes for the better in that regard, specifically. There's definitely, if nothing else, the fact that, as you say, that we are talking about it a lot more. It feels to me that when I started, or pre when I started, people just accepted it. It was just a given. Well, you want to be a vet, shut up and put up with it. And the expectation of my generation and beyond is increasingly, it's just not good enough. It doesn't have to be this way, and let's find better alternatives. So I think it's changing for the better. I think we'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a good point. Now that you say that, reflecting back on when I graduated, it was very much it's going to be tough, and it's kind of a rite of passage that you have to do it. You have to do it tough, especially as a new graduate, to sort of earn your stripes in the industry. But I think more and more, it is changing for the better. There's great mentoring programs available now for new graduate veterinarians. But as well as that, I am hearing of activity at a veterinary school level where students are becoming more aware of their own mental health and welfare. So there are, student welfare association groups or special interest groups, and they put on events at a university level where they have hot chocolate days or yoga days or whatever it might be. I've heard a lot of those types of activities. So I think it's very cool, and I think it's great that it's actually starting from vet school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day by Brendan Burchard, High Performance Experience. I think it is HPX, and he had Joe Dispenza, a guy who wrote a book about breaking your habits, and his big thing is around the use of meditation and mindfulness in terms of slowing down your thoughts, because your thoughts become your actions and so forth. And if you're a bit more aware of your thoughts, even in a slow process, you can then control somewhat your actions. And then that goes around in a cycle, because your actions then influence your values and then your thoughts again. So, and it was interesting you said there about yoga being used, and actually be interesting to see at what stage a transition into mindfulness and meditation actually, or whether there's a movement down that direction around just actually slowing down your thoughts and being a bit more conscious about your thoughts. Hot chocolate actually would be a good way of slowing down your thoughts on a cold day. Be like
anything chocolate related has been the mainstay of mental health support in veterinary practice for as long as I've been in the industry. It's been the only thing that saved many vets.
We at a Underwood hospital, we have bread and spreads and fruit available most of the time, like throughout the whole week. And we went through a phase where we used to have like one of those mega tubs of Milo, like,
Yep.
I don't know, like 4 kilos. I don't know if it was 4 kilos of Milo,
Yeah.
but like really big, right? And it's like no one could go through that much Milo and feel ill. But we used to churn through so much Milo that we had to bring out a policy, which was one scoop. The policy didn't work at all. But obviously chocolate helps it some way. Any form possible. But I used to have moments where I used to choke on the Milo because I put too much Milo. And you guys ever had those Milo choking coughs where you kind of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it brings you back.
The best combination
your thoughts back to breathing, to be able to breathe and not inhale the Milo.
Best combination. I think it was one of my nurses used to have two spoons of Milo with coffee, and then another 2 spoons of sugar.
Oh my goodness!
That'll keep you going.
Oh goodness, that's quite a high.
All you need is just powdered milk then, and you got all powders.
Yeah. It's true. Snorted. Now, Gerardo, back to the meditation thing. I actually spoke to a new grad, as in just graduated end of this year, and she told me that they actually do discuss it. They have sessions on mindfulness, on meditation, which is fantastic that they talk about it. She just her criticism was it was sort of seen as an extra thing, and they'd always schedule it on a Friday afternoon after lunch or something. So all anybody cares about is getting home and going on the weekend. So she said they didn't spend enough time on it, but at least they're touching on it, which I think is fantastic.
Well, there's so much research around that now, and it is such a movement, and there's proven clinical benefits around it as well. And I don't know if we talked about this in the previous podcast, but there's numerous apps that you can get which are for free, which can just help that process of being in control of your thoughts. And you got to train your mind. Like your brain has somewhere between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? And if you keep on thinking those same thoughts, right, what's your future going to be? The future is going to be the same as it was yesterday. So until you actually try to start influencing what you think, and the way to do that is by stopping your brain and really being in control try to be in control, so you influence the way you think, then you're going to keep on thinking the same thing. The future's going to be the same. So,
Mina, do you have any practice or anything in this regard that you do?
Yeah, I love meditation.
Yeah.
A very big fan. I've got a couple of apps in my phone, and I do a lot of guided meditations. I actually do it in between finishing work and carrying on with the rest of my evenings during the week, because it's just really nice for me to kind of wind down and let go of work, Mina, and transition into whatever it is I might be doing that evening. And I think exercise is another really big one. It's huge for me. It clears my mind completely. And I think the more intense the exercise, the better it seems to be for me, because it gives me no opportunity to think of anything else.
Apart from breathing.
Apart from breathing, yeah, that's exactly right.
Unless you had Milo.
Have you got any favorite apps out of the meditation apps you use? Have you got which ones do you recommend?
I really like the Smiling Mind app. That's a really good one. And there is also a yoga studio app. and it's particularly good because there are yoga sessions that you can do on there that I think there's 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute, 60-minute. So you can choose how much time you want to dedicate, and there's a yoga session or a meditation session there for you. And I find it particularly good, especially when I am traveling around, that I can still sort of take my yoga and meditation with me. So that's a really good one, Yoga Studio. I think it's a small cost for the app, but it's actually it's a great
Well
app.
worth it, yeah.
Well worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's lovely how it's becoming more mainstream. My kids, my 6 and almost 8-year-old boys, their school has wellness week this week, and that includes starting the day with yoga. My 8-year-old, I saw their lesson plan for the day the other day, and they were talking about growth mindsets versus fixed mindsets. At 7 years old, I was like, fantastic! I'm just learning about it now. So I think there's a hope for the future generation.
It's
That's
funny
really
you
cool.
say that. It's so cool. My niece, she's in year 7, so just early high school, and they had a week at school called Failure Week.
Oh,
And so
wow.
what they had to do for the entire week was focus on something that they are terrible at, that they frequently fail at, and it was around building confidence around, that you're just not going to be good at everything, and the importance of working hard at something that if you're not good at it, you can actually work hard and achieve, what you want to achieve out of it. So
Fantastic.
I think for her it was chin ups or something. but she got, but she's not a very athletic. She's really creative, but she's not very athletic. And she started off just being able to sort of hang off the bar, and I think she did 2 or 3 chin ups by the end of the week, and she was so pleased with
That's
herself.
so cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like a 300% increase.
I
It's awesome.
know, right? Yeah.
Oh, it's even more because we went from 0 to 3. 0 to 3 is like, I don't know. That's not even a percentage. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. That's
it's not 300% because if you had 1 and went to 3, it's 300. So it'd be even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it when
It's
you think
pretty
about that.
amazing.
You're
Yeah.
like, you play the numbers, so it's really amazing. And I reckon it makes a big difference. So,
Yeah.
Hubert, you go, mate.
All right. So we've talked about some of the struggles that people are going through, and some of the changes that we need to see. But I love that in our lead up to this conversation, you said you see the veteran degree as a golden ticket. I'd love to talk about that. Explain more.
Oh, look, when you study a veterinary degree, I think we can all agree that there's a lot that you learn, and you come out with a pretty unique set of skills and a lot of knowledge. And so what I mean about it being a golden ticket is I think we shouldn't underestimate how much you know as a veterinarian and how much value you can add across so many industries. So it's not just about, working in clinical practice or even as a technical veterinarian like I do. It's even across government. It's across, various industries where your skills and your knowledge is going to be sought after and valued. And so in my mind, I see a veterinary degree as a golden ticket to so many avenues in your career. So that's what I mean about it being a golden ticket, is that I think that it can take you so many places, and not just in different industries or down different career paths, but also around the world. Veterinarians are needed everywhere in this world. And so I think it's a golden ticket if you are interested in travel or you want to see different parts of the world or live elsewhere. It's a seriously great profession to be in.
One of the best, and that I can attest to that. I mean, I've lived in 3 continents with my degree. Got in relatively, I won't say easily into Australia, but it opened doors. And then I have friends who are specialist medical doctors who want to move from South Africa to Australia, and it's really hard. They have to redo exams 10 years after. And I sit there just going, thank goodness, it's just a good university, a veteran degree from a good university is really fantastic for that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You talked before about the 3-year itch. For me, it's about 2 years before I feel like I got to transition to something or use the skills to build into something else. What would you say to a veterinarian? What advice would you give a friend, I suppose, if they go, look, I'm feeling like I'm stuck and I'm not progressing and so forth? Is there any kind of tips that you would have for that person who's feeling that itch?
Yeah, sure. I think, look, as much as I'm very much about trust your journey and I'm a really big advocate for try something different, step off the worn-in track and do something totally different. But I think at the same time, it's a bit of look before you leap. Be really sure that whatever you're looking at is the challenge you want, not just the change you're after. So don't just change things for the sake of change. Be sure that what you're stepping into is going to be something that you'll enjoy and that you'll, jump in with both feet. So I think, yeah, definitely seek out those challenges, but really reflect, what is it that I want to achieve? You know, do I want change because I want to live elsewhere? Do I want change because I want different skills? I want to learn something different. Do I want to surround myself with different people? What is the reason for the change? And I think you really have to get down to the real nitty gritty about why you want that change before you make the change.
Yeah, that's amazing advice there, because sometimes when you think about the itch and you think about change, sometimes it's actually running away from something you actually should probably tackle. If the
Yeah.
situation in your current position is not conducive for you to do your proper work, but it's because of your colleague or because of and the environment, or something is not actually providing you what you need, or it's I suppose not facilitating your growth, then conversations, I think, would be a
Mm.
much tackling that and trying to deal with that and seeing whether or not you can create the environment you need through conversation, I think would be a powerful step in order to then sort of solidify, and then you've done what you needed to do before kind of jumping and leaping. So instead of running away, you are looking to step towards something,
Yeah.
as opposed to running away from something.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You can create change exactly where you are. You don't have to change careers or jobs or whatever it might be. You can create change right there. It might be more difficult, it might present more of a challenge, but hey, the greater the challenge, often greater the reward. So it
Mm.
might be worth investing where you are and trying to create that change for yourself there. Absolutely.
Now, deciding what it is you want to do when you realize, okay, this is not necessarily it anymore. That can be a challenge. But you said something in your story that I find quite important in this. This is from personal experience as well. You were sitting on a beach in
Mm,
Thailand on holiday when you figured it out. It's
mm,
very, very hard to think clearly about where you are and where you want to be. If you're working 50, 60 hours a week, you're exhausted, literally just struggling to keep your head above water. So I think it's certainly
absolutely.
personally to me is to say make some space. If you feel okay, I'm dissatisfied. See if you can cut back work hours, take a holiday, do something to get in a different headspace. And then when you do go on holiday, don't just get pissed every night and sleep all day. Make some schedule that as a goal to say I'm going to go there to commit a bit of time. For me personally, I had to cut back drastically on clinical hours to try and figure things out, and it worked, because as soon as you got some headspace, then things start falling into place.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting some distance from what you feel that you need change in gives you amazing perspective.
Can watch you wanting to say something, Gerardo. What
No,
are you
no,
pointing?
no. I was trying to freak you out by pointing a pen at you in the camera. It
Oh.
didn't work.
I thought you were having a seizure or something.
I thought it was
No, no worries.
code for something I wasn't in on.
Yeah.
No, that's the code for that secret question. No. Um, you mentioned before about mentoring and so forth, and from what I understand, you've done a couple of years as a mentor as part of the AVA mentoring program.
Yep.
Is there if you could, I suppose, um, distill all the advice you've given into a couple kind of little key areas, like are there generally you like the questions I get asked are around tackling things that people have never done before, so sort of concerns around competency and confidence and things like that. That's the main kind of stuff that I get asked when new veterinarians come through, is the doubt of them, their own doubt in terms of their ability to do things. But as a mentor over 3 years, you would have been asked numerous questions or offered quite a lot of advice to new graduate veterinarians. What kind of areas, I suppose, would be the key areas in which you were asked questions, so that people, I suppose, you could offer that advice to thousands of people?
Yeah, sure. I think so. Over the 3 years that I've been participating in the mentoring program, the two sort of key areas that I think of questions that I get very early on from new graduates is, am I taking the right job? That's definitely one that people just go around in circles around. There's so much doubt and confusion around, is this the right job for me? And the second one would be around interpersonal relationships. How do I sort of manage some of the people that I work with? How do I manage the relationships I have with them? How do I get them to understand my value as a new graduate veterinarian, being that I have all this knowledge? Maybe my skills aren't so great, but my knowledge is fantastic. And how do I get them to trust me and trust my knowledge? So those are probably the two main questions that I think I get asked. So obviously is this the right job for me? Is the very initial stuff. So at the very beginning of the mentoring program, and I really find that um, that as a new graduate veterinarian, there's almost this, what's the pinnacle of a perfect job that people build up in their mind, and then they go searching for it. And then when great jobs fall in their laps, they really do kind of sweat the small stuff and really start to tease out all the details and start to overthink things. So I think that's a really challenging time, is actually even just finding a job that's right for you and meets your expectations or what goals you have in mind around your first job.
What would be the advice you'd give them, I suppose?
Yeah, so this is just my personal advice. I don't know if this is like the best advice,
Mm.
but the advice that I generally offer them, because I suppose I'm not an overthinker, and sometimes that's to my detriment. I should think out the details more than I do. Um, as you probably know from me taking this job with Royal Canin without fully understanding what it was when I took it.
You probably were,
But
had sunburn and sun heat stroke, and then intoxicated with kind of sun. I couldn't think of any cocktails, but whichever one you were drinking at the
It's been a
time.
while,
Need to get
Gerardo,
out more,
hasn't it?
Gerardo.
You
Yeah.
do need to get
I'm a
alcohol.
beer and wine, and I'll mix them up in any order.
So yeah, I think because I'm not an overthinker, I feel like I can help in this space because I can kind of pull it right back and say, okay, um, yes, there are 20 things that we would want in an ideal job, but what are the three things that are the most important to you? And if a job ticks those three things, will you be satisfied with it? And if the answer is yes, then just make that your criteria, because you're not locked into your first job. And if it does go pear shaped, there are other options and there is an opportunity to move on. I feel like some of this fear and anxiety and overthinking actually comes from a place of, I'm terrified that this is the one and only job that I'll
Mm.
ever get offered,
Mm.
or, I'll take it and everyone else will carry on and I'll be miserable. And there's a lot of fear and anxiety around it, because there's a lot of pressure placed on your first job. But in reality, what are your three things that are most important to you? And if that job ticks those three things, then I say go for it.
That's awesome.
That's
Nice.
great advice. That is nice. Nice. Very good advice.
I wonder if it was like so simple. It's like, I want Milo
Yeah,
and sugar. It's
Exactly.
like I can work anywhere.
Exactly. And honestly, some people are that simple, and others need more. So in those three things are huge things.
Mm.
And that's okay too. I think you know, your first job is such an individual thing. It's a very personalized choice. So I find it quite challenging as a mentor when new graduate vets come to me and say, "Do you think this is a good job?" Because that really depends on who we're talking about.
Oh, totally based on perspective and what they
Mm.
want. It's like the whole thing about work-life balance. It kind of, makes me kind of cringe whenever someone says that. It's like, what is it? And what is the perfect work-life balance? It's actually so individual. People look at my life and go, "You have no work-life."
That's exactly right.
I work on the stuff I love working, and I work in it whenever I want to work. If it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I work in it. So go to the gym 12 o'clock at night sometimes. So like it's my life. I can do whatever I
Yeah.
like.
And then
So-
we wonder why he doesn't know any names of cocktails.
That's right. Oh. If there's
Exactly
anything with
right.
lychee, coconut, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'll give that one a go. If there's anything with,
Mm.
I've had horrible experiences with vodka, but let's not go there.
But
I
the
think we
second
all have.
question
We all
was
have.
you talked about interpersonal relationships,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
I don't know whether you can answer. What would be the one question you would ask there? But yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one there.
Yeah, I think that one comes down to it's individual scenarios, and um, often it's about new graduates feeling a bit hamstrung. You know, they have certain thoughts or ideas around how to manage cases, or um, they might even have new ideas to bring to the table, but they're not quite sure how to
Mm.
do so, and that's usually the underlying issue in many of those conflicts. So I think it's more about coaching them around. It's going back to that knowing your value, knowing what's appropriate, how to present an idea. It's communication, and I think a great line. My I suppose my very first boss when I was a vet said to me, was he said to me, people are often having the right conversations with the wrong people.
There we
And
go.
um, and that really stuck with me. It's really stuck with me over my entire career. That yeah, often, you're having these thoughts and ideas, but you're telling them to the wrong person. Go and have that conversation with the person that you need to have the conversation with, and you'd be surprised what the outcome will be.
Love it. That's cool.
I like that. That could go down. Can go down
Mm.
as a quote. You have the right conversation with the wrong person. In your job's
But
all about.
that's the thing that you shouldn't do, Hubert.
Yeah.
Yeah, have the
That's
Go
the
have
key
the
word.
right conversation with the
10 years
person
later,
that
10 years
is
later,
like,
I meet and
I
say,
mean,
that was the
Mina, this
worst
piece of
advice anybody's
is
ever.
terrible.
Yeah, my life's in ruins. I've been following your advice for 10 years.
Yeah.
Mina,
Oh,
your job will be all about communication. Um, do
mm.
you, same question as earlier, do you just learn out of necessity, or have you done any official communication training, or any good books that you can recommend on it, or how do you get better at it?
Yeah, I think there are some great courses that are available. So I have done a negotiating course, which
Okay.
interestingly was a lot more around communication than negotiating, because I guess it all comes back to communication always.
Hmm.
But I would recommend a negotiation course to most people, because I think we're constantly negotiating in life. And I actually completed the negotiation course through Swinburne University down in Melbourne. But I'm sure that there are a number of great, similar business courses focusing on negotiation. But I just think it's interesting, because when we step back and look at our lives, we're always negotiating with people personally and professionally. And so it's good to know what your negotiating style is,
Mm.
when you're comfortable and when you're stressed. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
my negotiating style is hammer. No, no,
well,
that was a joke. I don't do that. So, but yeah.
well, for some people it is, and that's
Mm.
okay, but it's really good to be aware of what your negotiating style is and know when you need to tailor it, because that's part of good communication. But one of the things, I think, yes, my role at the moment is really focused on communication, but I think being a vet is, in just generally
Oh
speaking,
yeah.
being a veterinarian is being a human is focused on good communication. But one of the things that I think really helped me um, as a veterinarian, but also in this role, was being in a customer facing job when I was going through vet school. And that's something I would highly recommend to any vet student I meet. I always say, if you're worried about how you're going to communicate when you're in practice,
Mm.
get yourself into a customer facing role. Learn what the general public is like to deal with, because at times things can be really challenging.
Mm.
Um, and get used to having some of those more challenging conversations, so that when they come up in a professional setting, you've got a bit more resilience around how to have those conversations. So whether it's paid or voluntary, I'd highly recommend people to do customer service or customer facing roles
What
to
did you
learn.
do?
So when I worked in the animal shelter, I actually worked in the surrendering department, so where
Hmm.
people would surrender their animals.
Mm.
That's a really tough place uh, to
Mm,
work,
yeah, yeah.
because people can sometimes surrender their animals for all sorts of reasons, but that's a
Mm.
really emotional place to work. And I also worked in the adoption centre. So the flip side of it was, helping people find the ideal pet for them. but it was an interview. So it was interviewing people, finding out what their lifestyle was like, what they were looking for in a pet, and then trying to educate them around what sort of animal would be best suited to them. And that can be really challenging, especially when people come in with a certain idea of what they want, and you've got to flip that on its head and convince them otherwise. Yeah, I think that those types of roles, anything that gets you interacting with the general public, is a really great thing to do.
Especially for a bunch of people who generally tend to be academics and booky sort of people who don't. Yeah, no, we can't make the generalization, but there certainly are a lot of veterinarians who are not naturally that way inclined. That's really really great advice. Yeah.
But also, I mean, I don't know if you guys had this experience going through vet school, but when I went through vet school, so many people said they wanted to be vets because they didn't like interacting with people.
Yep,
And so
that's what I
you
mean.
get out, yeah, and then you get out into the veterinary profession and you realize your entire job relies on good communication with people. Because if
Yeah.
you cannot communicate with the pet owner, you ultimately can't achieve what you want to achieve for the pet's health. So it all boils down to communication at the end of the day.
Yeah, and negotiation again, isn't it? Because it is like
Mm,
the communication with pet owners can very often be a case of negotiation.
absolutely.
You mentioned before um, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey
Mm.
as one of the books that you liked. Was there any other books that you or any other favorites that you come across that you think people should read?
There is another one. It doesn't have the most appropriate title, so you might already guess what it is. But
It's Orange
yeah,
Type.
yeah,
Subtle art of.
Yeah,
yeah. Subtle
yeah.
art of not giving a hoot.
Say it, say it.
So that book is actually great, and I really feel like that's a real lesson in, you've only got so much energy.
Mm,
So where are you going to put your energy in life? What are you going to choose to focus on?
mm,
Um, and remembering that what you focus on is always your choice.
mm. No, that's
Yeah.
that's a really good
So
summary of the whole entire book. You just summarized it in one go. So,
yeah, I wrote the blurb. Didn't you know? No.
oh, there you go. But yeah, that was my take from it as well. It's like you
Yeah.
really have you only really have so many hoots to give about
Yeah.
things. How about you really pick what you want to give two hoots about? So,
Mm,
yeah,
absolutely.
and that was just like there's also some amazing stuff about value and competition
Mm,
and yeah, I suppose it's like direction in life and so forth. But I think it's the key point is actually a pretty powerful point. The
mm,
Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I like rules number 3 and 4, and 3 is focusing on the main thing. What is the main thing? Like you get
mm,
drawn to different things, different directions, but put first things first. And number
yeah.
4, which is win-win. And I always try to think win-win in consults. How can I achieve a good outcome for the pet? How can I achieve a good outcome for the client? How could I demonstrate value there? How could I be of service?
Mhm.
And in doing both those things, we win as a profession as well. So, but yeah, awesome. That's really cool. They're two great books. So,
Yeah. I think they're brilliant. I think another piece of really great advice, actually, that my current line manager has given me, and I've actually scheduled time in the diary for this every week now, is, um, it's time just for reflection. It's just a press pause button on anything that might be going on around me. It's half an hour to an hour. I have a coffee with myself, and I I just touch base with myself. How's everything going on the to-do list for work? What's actually important? What should I be focusing on? But then it's a bit of, that personal stuff too. Am I achieving what I want to achieve personally? Am I getting to the gym as often as I like? Am I catching up with the important people in my life as often as I like? Am I focusing on all the things that I want to be focusing on, or have I gone awry? Because I think it's so easy to get swept up and get too busy,
Hmm.
and before you know it, weeks turn into months and months turn into years, and I think it's important to check in with yourself. Um, so
it's
that's
it's kind of like doing a
mm,
regular wheel of life on yourself and
mm,
rechecking the core areas of your life and where you rank and are you actually doing the things which are important for you?
Hubert has one question he always
No, hang
asks.
on. I still want to go back to this. Don't skip
Ah.
ahead. Do you when you do this, Mina? I'm just waiting for you to shut up so I can ask. Do you write it down when you do these? Let's call it. Well, do you journal or do you just sit and ponder and think about it?
I don't write it down. I just sit and ponder and think about it. I have a whole, like, I have a couple of goals that I'm trying to achieve for work. I have a couple of personal goals that I've set myself, and they're not, New Year's resolutions. They're ongoing ways that I want to live. What do I want to be doing every day? And I just check in with myself, and it's once a week, and it's actually a really calming experience. So it doesn't make me feel like anxious, or even if I find that I've been working on something, giving too much of my energy and time to something perhaps isn't that important, it doesn't make me anxious about it. It just makes me go, oh, I can just give that away then. And so it's actually a very calming experience. And I look forward to that time. It's in my calendar. It's called Me Time. I'm very original. But but yeah, I look forward to that in my calendar, because my work calendar will bing at me when I need to set that time aside. So yeah.
I'm asking about writing it down. I heard advice once about journaling, ideally daily journaling, and I tried, but I failed at turning it into a habit. But I do, and that I wrote down, and I'll do a similar thing to you, but not scheduled. It's mostly when I just feel completely overwhelmed and drowned. I have to sit down and literally write it down so you can see how bad are things actually going, and that actually the writing down of it to me is almost therapeutic, because then I start writing plans and what am I going to do about this, that, and this. But the writing down part's also good, because then occasionally I'll look back to it. Let's say 6 months later, you look back to it, and then it's a very nice way to go. Yeah, I'm doing all right there. Actually, that thing I worried about is moving, or there are things there that I look at and go, I've completely forgotten about that. So it could be a silly thing like, I feel like I'm not spending enough time with the kids doing fun things, and then so literally yesterday I found one of those entries in my I wouldn't say call it a diary. I just scribbled stuff down, and I looked at it and I went, yeah, that's not changed. I've totally failed on that in the last 6 months. I need to really make that a better priority. It's all work, and doing things with them that I have to do, but no fun. So it's nice to actually be able to use it written down as to score yourself on how you're going.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I had bath my dog on the list week after week after week after week. And yeah, he was starting to become quite offensive to the senses. And then I thought, okay, this I've got to prioritize.
What kind of dog have you got?
Self-bathing.
I've got a little terrier. He's 14 years
Oh,
old.
shame.
Yeah, I've had him for about a year. He's a little rescue, and he loves rolling in anything disgusting at the dog park. So he truly needs baths regularly. But yeah, there you go. So might not seem that important, but it is.
Oh, it's pretty important.
It's pretty important, especially in an apartment. It's very important.
So that's probably a good place to wrap it up, Gerardo. Now we can get to the question you were alluding to earlier. Have you got anything else to add, Gerardo?
No, I totally believe that you either do it when you really need to, or sometimes you do it and you schedule it. But I call it the wheel of life, only because I've done one myself, and I have a wheel which essentially has the main areas of my life: work, health, family, finances, and so forth. And I rate myself.
Am I on the wheel?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. Human, I don't know if I
give me a little slice on your wheel, Gerardo.
A little slice of wheel. But like I have a wheel for life and what work-life balance means for me, and I have a wheel for my job, and actually the areas in my job like surgery, medicine, imagery, and so forth. And I kind of wheel it all out, and like eight slices to the pie. And what do I want to focus on next? I really don't like the feeling of not knowing where I want to improve next. I really do like focusing on an area. I don't like being a generalist. I kind of like, okay, this is time now. Ultrasound. That's what I did. The ultrasound, 6 months on ultrasound. and I just focus on ultrasound.
Yeah.
So, but going back to that, the one question, Hubert, which you always ask, which I think is a great question.
Yeah. So, Mina, you're at a congress, and you've got pretty much the whole world's new graduates sitting in front of you, listening to you, and you've got a couple of minutes to give them just one bit of advice. What's it going to be?
Oh, I thought the previous question was heavy. No, look, I think what's important to remember is that, going back to what we discussed earlier, the industry is going through some change at the moment. And I know that speaking to veterinary students recently, they have mentioned to me that they feel as though perhaps there's a lot of negative attention on the veterinary profession, that, it's all hard yakka and it's all going to be very tough, and there's a lot of veterinary mental health issues, etc. And I think that's not to be ignored, and that's obviously very important. But what I would say to a room full of new graduates is that this is an awesome profession to be a part of, whether you're in clinical practice, whether you're in industry like me, or in government, or whatever it might be. It is an awesome profession to be a part of. We're all in the industry for the same reason, which is that we care about the health of animals and the welfare of animals. And at the end of the day, your veterinary degree is your golden ticket that will take you all over the world and across various career paths. And I would absolutely take every opportunity that you feel is right for you that comes your way. And don't be afraid to try something different. Really that whole concept of trust your journey, I think really resonates with me, because I think everybody will have a very different veterinary career path. And certainly from the outset, you think you're going to, be a small animal medicine specialist or a cow vet or whatever it might be, and it changes every time. Anyone I speak to, it changes significantly for them for the second that they leave vet school. So I would say keep an open mind, take the opportunities that feel right for you, and just grow yourself both as a person and a veterinarian.
Excellent. That'll do it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
No, thank you both.
Okay, and welcome back, and welcome to the Smash It section. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like several of our guests before, Mina spoke about the importance of scheduling time for regular reflection about where you are in life and in your career, as well as the importance of occasionally stepping away from your everyday life to enable you to take a bird's eye view of your situation. I don't think that many of us need to be convinced of the importance of holidays, but what we do need to keep in mind is that it is important to try to put some time aside during any break that you do take to do some self-assessment. For me, this often happens with a notebook on my lap on the flight back from a holiday, and it often ends up with the embryo of a plan for my next holiday. After you've removed yourself from the daily grind, it can be a really good time to ask yourself some questions like, how do you feel about where you're heading in life, and what can you do about it? If you don't feel like going back to work, stop and explore that feeling. Is this just normal post-holiday blues, or are there deeper reasons for these feelings? If there is a genuine desire not to go back, and we've all been there, then try to write down the reasons why and what you can do about it. What are the steps that you can take to fix it? So go ahead and book that time off. You have our permission. I also loved what Mina said about how change does not always need to mean a total career change. How you can sometimes create change right where you are. Consider whether you can work on changing some of the things that make you unhappy in your current situation. Remember, it starts with 1 or 2 steps. And then as for those more regular, smaller checks that Mina talked about, Gerardo, I know that you are a big fan of this. How often do you do this, and how do you go about it?
Yes, Hubert, I'm a big fan of regular checks, and it's only because I've had dramatic, how would you say, improvements in my productivity, but also how I feel about where I'm heading. It's clearer. So the first step was doing a wheel of life, and we talked about that in a previous podcast, and we can tag a resource in the show notes. So that gave me a bit of an idea of where I felt like I needed to work more on. And then what I've done at the start of the year was actually do a whole year plan of the things that I wanted to achieve by the end of the year. So I think about where I want to be, or if it came to New Year's 1 year later, what would a successful outcome look like for me? And what are the things I want to achieve? And then I work backwards from that and break it down. And then what I do is I have like a weekly plan, and then I have a daily plan. And I'm a real big fan of morning planners, where I ask myself, like I said, 10 questions, which are like, what would be a great outcome for the day? What are the 3 core tasks I need to do today? What is the situation that, if it arose, so what is the situation that I'm going to be in which could cause me stress? How do I need to be in that particular situation? And who do I need to bring my A game on for? There could be one person that really needs me to be focused, present, energized, or whatever. So my morning planners help me be the person I really want to be for the day. And then that rolls into, I recheck every week on Fridays, where I schedule my week moving forward, and I reflect upon that and see how I'm tracking for reaching my successful outcome at the end of the year. I also rely on other people to help me keep accountable. And I do actually have a coach, and a coach keeps me on track, but also make sure that I am stretching myself, because I could be quite relaxed and let myself go. But a coach is really important in order to keep me accountable, keep me on track, make sure I'm personally developing myself, and doing like what Craig Challen said, doing hard things so that I can step up into bigger and better things moving forward.
I'm fascinated by the coach thing. I can see a lot of value in that, and I think one day we'll have to do a little mini episode where we just talk about that and how do you go about that. But I think it'll go too long for this one. But we definitely have to revisit that topic.
I'll try to be more concise next time.
No, it was not a dig.
No. Mina also talks about learning more about public speaking for her job. Now, you might think, well, I'm not going to be presenting anytime soon, so there's no benefit for me. But the reality is that most of us in this profession are constantly presenting and negotiating. And that getting better at public speaking can be a great benefit to all of us, even if you never go near a stage. So how did I get or start to feel more comfortable with public speaking? Well, I started really small. I focused on the things that I felt competent and confident in. So, and that's the way that actually we do it at Animal Emergency Service. We get the speakers to select a topic that they feel comfortable in. Then they present it to their peers. Then they present it to a small audience of referring veterinarians. And then they learn a new topic. And slowly what happens, they develop a process around it, and they start to develop a ritual around it. And then things just start to become more automatic and habitual. They don't have to think about it. So there's less to think about. So then the speaking just occurs. Then what happens is you start to focus a bit more on technique, get feedback, ask for feedback. But then once you start getting feedback, then you can start to then set intentions. How do I want to be when I present this way? When I stand up for this group of people, what is the energy that I want to bring? What is the emotion? What is the feeling that I want to generate? Then what happens is you can then roll in other resources, YouTube videos, books. There's a good book that I read that Alex got me, which was TED Talks and how to deliver a TED Talk. And then things like Toastmasters, which then give you more structured feedback. So start small, talk about something you already know about, present it to people who you feel comfortable talking to, then build up the audience, presented it to another group of people, then select a different topic, be mindful of what you need to do to prepare, develop a ritual around it, make it a habit, then set intentions around the person you want to be or the way, the style you want to deliver, then ask for feedback, and then continue that sort of circle process. And then soon you'll find that you feel comfortable. I always feel nervous actually presenting in front of people, but actually what I do now is I know that nervousness results in me getting tightness of breath. So if I focus on making sure that I don't feel tight in my chest, then I'm able to reframe that nervousness into excitement. And then I just kind of jiggle my body a bit and get energized and bam, ready to rock and roll. And that's it for another episode of The Vet Vault. I hope that you feel more enlightened about the world of technical veterinarians and that you enjoyed Mina's podcast as much as we did. If you liked it, remember to tell 3 of your friends who you think might also enjoy it, and also to leave us a 5-star review. You guys are champions. Go smash it. That was perfect. That was perfect.